If I could only read your mind with superhuman power, life would be a breeze sometimes.
Hello and a very warm welcome back to Season 2 of The Good Stuff In Between with me, Shaun Milne. It was an idea I decided to roll with last year about chatting with folk from right across the music industry. Artists, managers, PRs, stage and tour crews, festival teams, photographers, basically anyone who helps make the magic happen. The idea to draw on their experiences, their compelling stories, their mistakes, and their extraordinary successes, so that those who want to break into this world can have some kind of point of reference to consider, to know they're not alone. It was a shot in the dark really, but I've been quite frankly blown away by your reactions. So I want to take a moment very quickly just to say thanks, not just to my previous guests who took part, but to everyone who listened, who shared, and who have given feedback on the project and encouraged me to make a leap and keep at it. I'd like to have recorded some stuff sooner, but in truth, life and work happens, so it's taken a while longer. But there's been plenty going on, including the launch of a new newsletter at goodstuffinbetween.substack.com that I would urge you all to sign up for. It's free, but maybe it'll help find a sponsor to help fund all of this. The whole raft of guests are lined up in the coming weeks ahead. I also hope to hit the festival trail to see what interviews I might be able to capture there. But in the meantime, we're back with a bang. Seán R McLaughlin is regularly lauded as one of Scotland's great songwriting talents, a sorcerer of imagery and words that both hit you in the heart and provoke you in the head. Having plied his trade with the Birthday Suit, Dante, and now with the Wind Up Crows, and what has been a solo effort with friends, professionals, to deliver what is another stunning album, Goodnight, Lad, which has already produced a raft of singles to quite considerable critical acclaim. He talks in depth about the inspirations and motivations, he lets me geek out on the processes and the how-tos, reflects on his 2 decades of creative free spirit, and a lot about the people and the opportunities that have helped him along the way. So if you're into songwriting, if you love people who love their art, then this is for you. It's dedicated to all those whose voices are still bringing us stories from the past. Today I'm with Seán McLaughlin, singer, songwriter, musician, producer, back now with a new creation and an album, most excitingly of all, Goodnight, Lad. And also, have you changed? Seán R McLaughlin and the Wind Up Crows.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, how's it all going?
It's going well. I mean, the R had to be added because there are many Seán McLaughlins, so it was more to do with Googleability than me being a pretentious writer or something. It was when you Google Seán, I think the top hit for Seán McLaughlin is some meteorologist in America, so I needed to put something in there so that, like, if people are actually looking for my music, they can find it. But yeah, it's going well. It's we finished a record. It's going to be out in May. Getting nice feedback on what we've put out so far. Put out a couple of singles and an EP, and sort of lead up to it. Getting to do a homecoming show to launch the record. We're back up at the Shetland Folk Festival, which is always really nice. And we're doing vinyl again, which is good. So.
And you very kindly brought me a test pressing earlier on, it looks great.
No worries, yeah. Hope it sounds good too.
I saw some pictures of you down at the plant, sea bass, and there's this like transparent blue.
Yeah, so we decided to go for this sort of like, a lot of my writing focuses on themes that maybe have something to do with the sea in some way, and I kind of as a 10 years. So we just wanted a lot of the artwork for the record and the vinyl itself to have that sort of slightly sea feel to it. So it's a slightly marbly blue. It's really cool. Yeah, it's I'm really into vinyl, so it's nice to have something like that. Yeah, it's nice to present the music in that way.
There's a whole bunch of stuff we can get into here, but I'm actually really excited by this because Seabass is quite new. I think it was just ended last year set up.
Yeah.
How do you go about that as an artist? Just like, I need to get a vinyl done, and off you go.
Well, I've been doing it for a long time now. So we like myself and a few mates when we were at uni, sort of in my early 20s, we set up a label called Stitch Records, and it was and continues to be kind of a vanity project, which is great. But like, so we learned all this a long time ago, and it was a big learning curve. So it's become a wee bit second nature, like doing everything for vinyl. But back in the day, and up until very recently, if you were making music in Scotland, you had to use a sort of intermediary to get records pressed, and the intermediary would check your artwork, check your audio files, check everything was right for vinyl, and then they would get it pressed somewhere, usually in the Czech Republic. But now, as of November last year, there's a pressing plant in Scotland, and you don't have to deal with an intermediary, you deal directly with the plant, you can go to the plant. It just feels, it feels more like the type of operation that we want to work with, because we're a micro label as well, and it's nice having these sort of small companies based in Scotland that are trying to strengthen the Scottish creative economy. So now all our records will get pressed in Scotland, so which is great. But
have you been down and had to look how they do it then, and to get
we did that a couple of weeks ago, last week, really recently. We got to watch our record getting pressed. The sleeves hadn't arrived yet, so we got to watch the record get pressed in the machines, and we got to listen to them and see how it's all done. We were there for 2 hours because I was completely fascinated by the whole process. Vicky, my partner, sort of dragged me away at the end, but that was great. The sleeves hadn't turned up, so all the records just got put into the inner sleeves and then just stacked afterwards, but we got to watch all that happen. And
how did it feel? It must have been super exciting.
It was, yeah. I think it's not, I didn't really want to, I just like vinyl as a physical format for music. I mean, most of the time I'm listening to streaming services and things, but I think it's probably to do with, again, when I was first getting into popular music, vinyl was the cheapest way to do that because no one was buying vinyl. When I was 17, 18, 19, 20, vinyl was like £3. So, and you couldn't get digital music, like you had to Napster or, there was no cheap way of doing it digitally. So pre-Spotify, the cheapest way for me to listen to music was vinyl, so I ended up with a big vinyl collection, and it's a much more involved way of listening, I think, as well. It's a bit like, it's the music equivalent of like watching a film or something. You do engage with it, I think, a lot more than maybe chucking a record on and then scrolling through some crap online, or chucking a record on and making the tea. So I've always been really into vinyl. But yeah, I think your question initially was like, how do you do it? So I've skipped over that. In what sense do you mean? What do you mean if you're an artist and you want to think about pressing on vinyl, or?
Yeah, so if I'm in the industry, I've been trying my best for a few years now to make that leap from, I've been putting stuff out in Bandcamp, or I've been using social media, which seems to be all the rage these days, but I thought, I want to have a record. I mean, most people wouldn't have the first idea of how to go around that. Yeah,
I think the mastering engineer is your friend in the first instance. I suppose I would backpedal slightly. I think if I totally get having vinyl is amazing, and releasing your music on vinyl is a really cool thing to do, but it has to be at the right time as well, because it's a very expensive thing to do. So releasing on vinyl, although the potential profit is quite high compared to, say, Spotify, which the potential profit is almost zero, you have to know that people are going to buy it. You have to know that people are going to buy the record. And having had a micro label for a long time, we have made some very big mistakes with CD and vinyl and things. We've pressed 500 copies of things that sold like 30 copies, and then we've got 470 copies of these old jazz records that are going nowhere now. So the first thing I would do is just make sure that you have roughly, thereabouts between 50 and 200 people that are going to be interested enough to maybe buy a record. And then at that point, get a good mastering engineer involved. When you've got great music, the music's all done, songs are all done, hire a mastering engineer that really knows what they're doing with vinyl. And there are loads of fantastic mastering engineers in the UK. You don't need to go to the studios, you can send them the stereo files. They'll tell them that you're going to release on vinyl, and they'll make like a vinyl specific master of your record. So whether it's a single or an album or whatever. So the guy we use is called Ed Woods, who's amazing. We've used others in the past, but Ed is consistently doing great work for us, so we've been using him for a few years. He did that for us. He made this side A, side B. That's what you send to the plant. It doesn't have the individual tracks. It's just one long WAV file and then another long WAV file, and that's how they like to receive it. My understanding is there's a bit of EQ goes on as well, because as the needle moves towards the center of the record, there's a difference in the EQ bias, and the EQ has to make sense on vinyl as well. And there's only so long you can fit on one side, so there's so many things to consider that if you're an independent artist, you don't have to consider those things if you hire a master engineer and tell them you're doing vinyl. So
when you do that, you said you've been left with some in the past. Is it a financial hit there? Is it a bit demoralising, or do you just laugh it off?
Just laughed it off, I suppose. I mean, everything, like, it's just learning, isn't it? Like, we, fortunately, at the time when we set up our label, there was a lot of silly money flying around. In the, what year would that have been? Sort of mid to early 2000s. There was a lot of things like Business Gateway throwing money all over the shop. So we didn't personally lose any money, but we were rather foolish with our the investment from a number of little places.
How did Stitch come about?
So, like I said, a few mates, we were at uni. So initially it was myself, a guy called Zach Moyer, who's now professor of something or other at Napier University. He's a music professor. So we were all at Edinburgh Uni together, and then our mate Dave Farnioli, who was a playwright. It's a long story, but anyway, that's the short version. Is there's a few of us set this thing up, and it was to release music that the people in Edinburgh were making. So either our own music or our mates, or things that were going on. And the purpose was that it was kind of alternative music. And Edinburgh, unlike Glasgow, doesn't have an amazing relationship with alternative music. It's quite safe. There wasn't really. There are a few labels after that, like, that did cool things, and there are a few amazing bands came out of Edinburgh. But Edinburgh could be quite safe in terms of like what was going on. So
can you remember your first track?
First track that we put out, that I put out or that the label put out?
The label, yeah.
The label, the first record we put out was called. It was by a band called the Multiple Organism Jazz Orchestra.
Catchy.
Mojo for short. And the record was called, I have absolutely no idea, but you can have 100 copies if you want.
How do you think digital influences how artists emerge these days? Is it a good thing, giving opportunity to those who might never have ever had that chance, or has it crushed creativity and the sort of romance of it all?
What, the way we can, the speed at which we can release music and have access to it, is that what you mean? The ability
and just
to
that
put music
journey
out?
of launching the careers, or some people we've spoken to previously have talked about how it's a real slog, mental health issues, and that if you get to a certain point, a label has this expectation on you, whereas other people, particularly doing it independently, have perhaps got a different viewpoint of the benefits or otherwise.
Yeah, I think quite early on, we knew that the music we were making was never going to be of any interest to major labels, and that we were never going to make a living from it necessarily, and we were never going to. So there wasn't this, there wasn't something we were heading towards that we thought we were going to get signed, and like that whole ridiculous concept of making it. We weren't really interested in that. We would love, and I'd still love for, like, the things we do to wipe its face. So you make a record, which is an expensive thing to do. You release a record, which is an expensive thing to do, and for that revenue to return back in itself and work. But I'm always a wee bit concerned about. It sounds like I'm being an old dude, but I'm always a wee bit concerned about like younger musicians that are interested in making it, or like are chasing major labels, or chasing that kind of success. Because I think if you're evaluating yourself in that way, if that's how you're going to measure success rather than the success of your art or the thing you're making, then it might be, at some point that might be quite disheartening, and statistically it's quite likely you're going to feel a bit shite about yourself after a while, because most people will never get signed by a major label. Most people will never achieve those things, despite the illusion of social media and Spotify that it's quite easy to become massive. It is an illusion. The major labels and the artists that you've heard of, they still have huge marketing budgets. People are spending hundreds of thousands of pounds before you hear about those artists. And I think because that's invisible, that can be quite an emotionally, or it can be emotionally damaging thing if young musicians are looking at the industry in that way, or looking to achieve those things. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, but it's really interesting to hear you say that, because I mean, your own music, your songwriting in particular, is very well received, acclaimed. You're regarded as this terrific Scottish talent. You've got a track record.
You've been talking to my mum.
Yeah, she's sent me a message.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, I asked her to do that.
But you worked with Rob Jones with the Birthday Suit.
Yeah.
For after Idlewild took its break. Dante. Obviously your most recent project before this, I think, was seemed to be you're on fire. You're doing live gigs. You've been at big festivals. You've been doing. We were talking earlier before we started about the so far kind of concepts. Mm-hmm. You get great write-ups whenever you release stuff. Even the most recent singles, hair bands, the feathers, Nine Wells. You've got a huge degree of publicity for as well. So there is success. Might not be commercial success, but I guess the question would be, if you'd had that financial backing from somewhere, do you think that would have followed, or does it not matter to you as an artist because you're satisfied with your body of work?
I think all I want to do is make enough money to buy more music crap and make more music. Like I'm not, and although sometimes, so on social media, like if we get a good review or somebody's writing something nice about us, we'll share that. But I've learned not to take that in too much, because also at the back end, what we're not sharing is people going, nah, it's a lot of shite, we don't like that, or some. Nobody ever says like this is the worst. Like it's not horrible, but there's quite a lot of like stuff that comes in like, oh, this is boring, or we don't like this, or that happens as well. Like it's perfectly normal for quite a lot of things to come back in, and for journalists to either just say not for me, or for someone to say I'm not into this is boring, or this is uninteresting, or whatever. So you can't have, in order to protect yourself from that stuff of like going, oh crap, I'm boring, I make terrible music, you also can't necessarily take on board the praise, so I really like that, and I love that journalists take the time to write about the music and to listen to it, and it's nice that hopefully they enjoyed the experience of listening to music and talking about it, but try not to dwell on either side of that, because
what about live? That must be a different experience altogether, because you're seeing people's reactions in real time.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose so, but then you don't know what they're thinking. You can tell if they're enjoying themselves, I suppose, but no, I absolutely love playing live. Love making records, but sometimes the business side of things, you need to engage with that in a mindful way, I suppose, so that you sort of protect yourself from certain things that can make you feel quite shite about what you do.
This project then is described as a solo project, despite the fact it's got a whole bunch of people involved as well. But it's your baby. I was reading somewhere that you've converted your garage. It was the first time you'd sort of done most of the production on your Jack Jones as well. Why? You had Dante, you had these other projects. Is this a creative urge? What is it?
To make the studio and stuff, and to do something else, or
to do this project.
I mean, I think the making a studio in my garage thing was like, studios are very expensive, so we've made records in studios before, in some lovely studios and some amazing studios, and had an amazing time, but because of the nature of making records that way, that's a very expensive way to make a record. So it's not always sustainable to continue making records in that way. So that, and also I love having a lot of control over how things are made and how things are produced and how things are recorded and how things sound. And if you're paying a lot of money to be in a studio, you don't have loads of time to deliberate over whether something should be done or could be done a different way. Whereas if you're not paying in your house, then you've got a lot more creative freedom. So there was that, but also that started in lockdown, so I needed something to do, in the house. So I really enjoyed like putting pine cladding up and putting a floor down and painting, and those physical activities were really, really enjoyable. Like, and it was something productive to do when you were just stuck in your house. So I kind of missed the building of that studio in some ways as well. But yeah, the creative freedom that's given us has been,
Do you just get lost in there as well? Do you just find yourself, you think you've been there an hour, 5 hours later, like, God, where's the time gone?
Totally. Loads of times. I've stopped making music for a little while just now, just stopped, because there's a lot of times where you can end up, great fun, you can end up be like 4 in the morning and then you've not really had any sleep, so you need to be really careful with that, which is an amazing thing if you've got holidays and you can go have a lie down afterwards, but if you've got work to go to, it's probably not ideal.
You talk about the creative freedom as well and having that time, which you probably wouldn't get if you're paying by the hour for a studio. I've been lucky enough to listen to some tracks from the new album, and it strikes me that there's so many layers of sounds in some of them as well. Did that all come out because of that? Would you have been able to make the same album, do you think?
Probably not. It's a really different record to the last Dante record. So the last record we put out was a record called I Wear You Out With Mine, and that was almost 100% in a lovely and appropriately priced studio, but it's a very different sounding record. You can afford to take risks. I think what you're hearing is that you can take some risks. You can try something. You can throw it at the track, and if it doesn't work, it didn't cost you £50. So I think that's where you get ear candy and interesting things happening in records.
It also feels sort of very personal, like you've got your own kind of DNA and your own secrets in it as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it reminded me a little bit of making records because the first couple of Dante records, they were just made in my flat, really. It's the first EP that we put out on vinyl, that was just like in a flat in Edinburgh, and then the second record, there was a couple of studios involved, but a lot of that was in a flat. And then I really enjoyed that, like sort of in my late teens, early 20s or whatever, making those records. And I think I also wanted to get back to that, because I think that was how I like making records. I like having creative freedom, and I'm not particularly bothered about very posh sounds, like dead rooms or anything like that. I like spaces being present in records, like here in the room it was made. And a lot of my favourite records have those things built in. You hear the room. It's not just a dead sounding space.
Yeah, soundtrack of living kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of found sound stuff on the record as well. Like I captured bits and pieces of like where I live and conversations and things that are sort of dropped in, and I used some old reel-to-reel recordings of long past family members and things, and I could never have done that. I couldn't have got an old 60s reel-to-reel out and looked for something in the middle of a recording session so home recording has its advantages for sure.
Hairband, the most recent single, has some family connection for you as well.
Yeah, in a couple of ways. The most obvious way is my daughter's laughing at the end, so that's an obvious family connection. But the second, what I think you're referring to, is the fact that I started working with this amazing Indian violinist called Ragini Shankar. Again, that was like a conversation during lockdown where on social media, I really love Carnatic violin playing or Indian classical violin playing. It's so expressive. It's like the voice. That's where the Carnatic bit comes from, and so full of like glissandos and and some records that have been really sort of like slide violin heavy that I've enjoyed in the past, like Laura Vere's. But my maternal grandmother was born in a wee village called Chakradapur near Kolkata, and for a long time I've been interested in, well, I'm always interested in identity, but for a long time I've been interested in maybe bringing some of that family heritage, that identity into my work, but I'm very aware that that can be done in tasteless ways. White guy buys a sitar. It can be very naff. So I wanted to do that and work with someone who really understood Indian classical music. And I absolutely love Ragini's playing. So tentatively asked her if she'd be up for playing on a track, and she liked the track, played on it. And the thing I love about that as well, that I can listen to that track and her playing on it, and I can enjoy it like a music fan. And that's rare on a record that you've made, to like listen to it and enjoy it, because it's all her. Those parts are all her. I've made some drones and textures, but it's nice being able to listen to those tracks and enjoy those big improvised sections.
When her contribution arrived, the files arrived, and you heard it for the first time, can you remember what your emotion was?
Yeah, I started crying. Absolutely. Yeah, it was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Really overwhelming. I told her that as well. I wasn't too big to tell her that. So the playing's incredible. It's so emotionally expressive, that style of playing. I absolutely love Vicky's playing as well. Like, Vicky's playing's brought me to tears as well. She writes amazing parts. They're really different, but I think that sort of, it was like cathartic, because it was like someone had helped achieve something that I could never have done on my own, to present that sound in a meaningful way and in a really authentic way.
Do you think some point in the future you might have an opportunity to do that live with her?
Maybe. I haven't asked, but it's a long way for her to go to play a gig at Sneaky Pete's or whatever.
Music doesn't know any boundaries.
Yeah.
Collaboration seems to be a big thing in your music as well.
Yep.
So many names pop up. You've got a connection with the Felice brothers.
Yeah. So Jeremy Backofen, who produced, mixed, played drums on the vast majority of the Felice brothers records up until very recently, I suppose, and maybe recently as well. So I'm a big Felice brothers fan. I got into the Felice brothers through, I don't know if you know an artist called Bright Eyes.
Yeah.
Conor Oberst. So Conor Oberst made this record, 2 records, one called Salutations and one called Ruminations. And the one that was called Salutations, the Felice brothers are the band on it, and I just thought this band sounded absolutely incredible and the record sounded incredible, and then I dug into that and then got into the Felice brothers back catalogue, and their sound is so, like we were talking about earlier, so roomy, so like it just sounds so lively and sort of authentic to their what they're trying to do musically, and it's not dead sounding, it's not sterile, I suppose. So I got in touch with Jer, sent him a few demos and stuff. He liked it, and then long story short, he ended up mixing a good chunk of this record and playing on it as well. Like, his production mixing style was not just send me the files and I'll throw some faders up. He played some slide guitar, he sang on some stuff. It was very involved, so it was great having him on board with the record too.
That must be very cool.
Oh, it was amazing, absolutely. I mean, it's everyone that's involved in the record though, I've been blown away by. It's been brilliant working with everyone that's on this, but Jer I hadn't worked with before, so like it was very new and exciting, and like I definitely work with him again. He's so good.
I discovered Felice brothers from it must have been their second album. It's an eponymous album, and a couple of years later they were playing in Glasgow, and I had no idea. I hadn't seen the tickets were for sale. Couldn't get any. Turned up at the door and managed to sneak in.
Nice.
That was amazing.
I to be honest though, I did know that record, and I did know about them prior to their play. Like, but I hadn't dug into them in the same way, And there was a famous record called Tonight at the Arizona. Have you heard that record? So that's got like lightning strikes in the middle of recording that record, and they left it in. like everything blows out and there's this. It's not actually a particularly great sound. It's not like, I don't know. It's not like a dramatic Frankenstein noise. It's just
A moment.
and the desk goes down, but the record itself says on the front, "Lightning strikes" in the middle of this record, and we just left it in. So.
And Andy Monaghan as well, for drummers.
Yeah, exactly. I've been working with Andy for a long time though. Andy, I've been working with for over a decade probably. He did a good chunk of the first Dante record. He did the whole of the second Dante record. He did for this new record. He did maybe 50% of it, or like 40%, 50% of it, and then Jeremy Backofen did like maybe 50, 60%, something like that. So. I'll always continue working with Andy as well. I think I made the right decision in that I chose the tracks that I thought Andy would make the best job of, and I chose the tracks that I thought Jeremy would make the best job of, and I think that worked really well. That like the next single we're putting out at the end of this month is very Andy. It's very like it worked. Yeah, I'll send you. It's very like he knows exactly what to do with this like indie rock.
What's that going to be?
Thing. It's a track called Wishing Well, and it's probably the most upbeat track that we have on the record, I think. And
what's the story behind that one?
It's a long story. So I mean, it started as like I got really into character writing, like writing sort of kind of short story type things in songs. There's only so much you can do, like writing about yourself and things. And I started to find that uninteresting after a wee while. So a lot of my writing now is that I'm writing about things or characters that I can relate to, or that I empathise with, or that I can that I'm interested in, but they're not necessarily me. So it started as that. But also I got we stay in a place called Scotlandwell, and there's like a 13th century, maybe before that, like well there, and I really liked the idea of this wishing well. I don't think the song does it justice, but the well is more interesting than the song. But I like the idea of wishing wells, and I wanted to build that into a song, and the sound of the word wishing well is cool as well. But yeah, the song's kind of, I think it's kind of about social media a little bit, kind of what we were talking about earlier on. I think it's kind of about data collection, and I know I shouldn't ask to describe my songs before people hear them, make them sound shite. It's kind of about that, how difficult it would be to disappear, how difficult it would be to there's so much captured online that we don't really have much control over our identities anymore, and I think that's kind of what the song's about.
Some of the previous songs that have come out already, again, all seem to have stories at their heart. Has that always been the way you've worked?
No, I think initially when I started writing a long time ago, it was a way of, like, for anyone. This isn't exclusive to me. If anyone starts writing songs, it's a way of negotiating your own emotions, or thinking about how you feel about things, or expressing how you feel about things, and it's all very autobiographical. So you get dumped, and a way of coping with that when you're 15 is to go and write a song about it. And and I'm not belittling that at all, that's a really useful thing for anyone to do. So just express those really hard to deal with things through something like songwriting. But after a while, it becomes less interesting. So I read a lot of short stories. I'm really into short stories. But I also like the blurring of the boundaries between what's autobiographical and what's sort of fiction. So the record, a song can be semi-autobiographical or completely fictitious, or it can be a combination of all of those things. So it was a way of allowing me to keep writing, because I'm not that interesting. If you just wrote things that happened to you that day, that's a really boring way to think about making music.
The whole wearing your heart on your sleeve kind of thing that some artists have done, or as you talk about, so almost autobiographical concept. Yeah. I've always considered that quite a brave thing to do, putting yourself out there.
Yep.
But I'm curious to know what impact it has on songwriters who are going through a process? Is it some kind of, you getting the emotion out, you're getting thoughts out, you're clearing your head the way you sort of tidy a room kind of thing, or is it just a cost that you pay?
No, not at all. Like, I mean, I still do write autobiographical stuff. It's still important to me if it's a good way of coping with things or dealing with things or just expressing things. No, I've never found it. It always makes you feel better. Like, you know, it's the same as like meeting someone and saying, feeling a bit shite today, let's have a chat and a coffee or a pint or something like that. Here's what's going on, and then the person listens. It's the same kind of process. It's like, just if you write about those things or you express those things, it will make you feel better. I suppose, as you say though, it can be quite raw, you know, writing about things that are very, very very personal. And I think maybe also for me a way of protecting myself a little bit is some of it is autobiographical and some of it's fiction. I don't necessarily have to say which is which, so that
I guess you take control of it, and
yeah.
like anybody who listens to music, the listener will put their own interpretation of it related to their experience.
I hope so. Yeah, I think that's a really useful. Of course, yeah. I mean, I think as much as I say I make music for myself, I think it's also there's definitely a social. Making music is a social thing, especially if you're putting it out. It's a social thing. You're saying, here's my experience. Anyone got anything to add to this, or anyone interested in this, or is this useful to anyone? And sometimes it is, and it's nice when that happens. It's nice when folks say, "Oh, this is expressed how I'm feeling," and that. Yeah, I think there is a social relationship with like putting music out. It's a conversational thing as well. In the same way that I'll listen to something and I'll find it inspirational, or I'll relate to what this singer's saying about these things, and like it's a conversation and it's a social thing. So,
do you remember how you got into songwriting? What your first song might have been, even?
Yeah. I think I was probably about 13 or something like that, and I think music was always a really important part of my life, though. Like, I grew up around musicians, and my mum she was a co-organizer of the folk festival in Shetland where I grew up, and
Bresse, was it?
Yeah, I grew up in a wee island called Bresse, and like there was amazing musicians on the island though. So like even today, one of my favourite bands of all time is a band called Bongshan that no one will ever have heard of, but they were sort of that Martin Bennett thing, you know, like. And they were like alternative folk, doing really interesting things with folk music. But the guy, the singer, songwriter in Bongshan, he lived like up the hill from me, like on that island, and he was as famous as like Bono or something, you know, like I didn't see any distinction when I was 8 years old of like this guy has a CD and this guy has a CD. There's no distinction here, you know, they're both in it, but that guy I can go and see him, and. So yeah, I think it was all just making music and making art and like writing. It was always really, it was normalized, I think, is the point I'm making. It was completely normal to do that, and I think that it would be nice if more people had that experience, that like it's normal to write songs. So the first song I ever wrote though, I'm sure it was a big like bag of crap about me and my mate used to sit down and write these like subpar. Do you remember a band called Ash?
Yes.
Yeah, so we used to write these like subpar Ash songs, and they were all like very, very crap versions of Girl from Mars. Like all this stuff. I can't even. I'll dig one out if you want. I've got them all on tape somewhere.
Still have the tapes.
Yeah, I'm a bit weird like that. Like, it's not that I listen to them. It's just I like having. You know, I wouldn't. But at the same token, I wouldn't ever like delete all the sessions of an album I'd made, you know. So
it's a good thing, because also my previous career was in sort of journalism, and I had notepads and recordings and all sorts, and chucked up a couple of house moves ago. And
did you? Oh no.
It was space, but I could have maybe put them somewhere else. Wish I had.
Yeah, I mean I've got everything somewhere. I don't know if I can play them all though, but I've got them somewhere.
Again, part of the idea of this podcast is for people to take ideas and inspirations and how they go about things. Your process for songwriting, is it something that's unique to you, or do you think there is a shared workflow almost that, I mean, you teach as well, so
Yeah.
obviously this will be something you'll discuss with people for a long time, a couple of decades you've been doing this?
For writing, yeah, I've been writing a couple of decades. I've been teaching for nearly 2 decades as well, I suppose. Yeah.
And how do you convey what you do? Do you teach writing?
Not really. I think I don't really want to. If students are making music, unless they hit a block or something, I don't really want to interfere with their process. You know, I think if they're not being productive, then I can help a little bit with that. I think I've got ways of like being more productive with writing, or for like being less worried about what you're writing, I suppose, is the main thing. But a lot of what I do is kind of just like learning facilitation. You just create space and time and support and facilities, and like it's just a nice atmosphere where someone can make music with all the things they need to do that, and with a bit of support and a bit of feedback. And it's not education in the kind of you need to come to me for all the information or you won't be able to do it form of school education. You know, doesn't work like that, and it can't work like that, because when students graduate, they shouldn't need to come to you for anything. You know, they should be able to do it themselves, and they can all, you know. So
because it's not a formula, it's more like mentoring, if you will.
exactly, yeah, it's like helping out and giving a bit of feedback. But I think the longer I've been doing it, the less I'm convinced of my feedback as well. Like if a student might bring something, and if you know, it's really hard to work out aesthetically if what's being presented to you is what they intended to do. You know, because if it sounds a bit out of tune, or it sounds a bit like roomy or something like that, there are amazing records that sound a bit out of tune and roomy. So the thing you have to do is like have these conversations about what they were trying to do, and do they feel they achieved it, and if they didn't, how could we maybe get there? And
must be very inspiring as well to hear all this new
totally, yeah. I mean, I get to a good amount of my week is listening to some new music that no one's ever heard, so that's great. So I get a lot from that, and I do genuinely find it inspiring. And a couple of weeks ago, I was up in an amazing studio called Watercolour Studios in Ardgour near Fort William. We were there for like a week, and there was not really any plan necessarily. It was just, here's the studio, it's residential, here's some food, and a pile of students just made these amazing pieces of music. Like some of them came with songs, some of them made new songs, and because we had access to the studio 24 hours, we captured loads of brilliant performances of these new songs, of this new music. So that was a really inspirational experience for me as well, and I just got to witness all that happening, and only really step in if something was derailing slightly. So
how do you judge your own songwriting from, you know, the early stuff to what you've just released?
I think I've improved. I think my writing's I mean, but then it's nice going back to listening. It's nice listening to music that I made when I was 21, 22, 23, and hearing that younger version of myself saying things about how they were experiencing the world or what they were thinking about. And I think that's nice. Like, it's nice remembering what it was like to be that person. But I would hope that my writing's improved, and that I'm making music that's maybe more useful to more people now.
I remember reading or hearing Justin Curry talking about Nothing Ever Happens.
Yeah.
And somebody said, oh, it's a record that set you off on your way, and he was like, too many bloody words.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. Yeah, he's a very self-deprecating dude, but he's also hilarious. I saw him play Perth the other day. Actually, there was a Scotland Sings Burt Bacharach, and he was brilliant. I mean, everyone at that was brilliant. I'm not absolutely 100% on the lyrics, but I love the melodic ideas and the harmonic ideas in Burt Bacharach's music. He didn't write the lyrics, so it's not. But Justin Curry was amazing there, and so sad to hear about. I mean, yeah, to read about his Parkinson's, to hear about his Parkinson's, and that he's finding it more and more difficult to play the guitar. And I've been reading a little bit about that, and the fact that he's seeing this he understands there's going to come a time fairly soon where he won't be able to do it anymore, and that was quite sad, because Delamitri were a big part of the Scottish musical landscape when I was growing up as well, and he's an amazing writer and a great singer, so it was quite sad, but it was great to see him still playing, and his voice is still incredible. So
yeah, I'm going to see him this year. He's up at Headkilt again this year.
Oh, cool! They playing nice. Delamitri, superb. Yeah.
So that'll be good. Where did the name come from for Wind Up Crows?
So I wanted to release a record that was kind of just me, but there are so many other people involved in it that I wanted to give that a name as well, so it wasn't just my name, because that felt disrespectful to everyone else that was going to be involved in it, you know. So I had this chat with, I've been working with this guy Steve and Tom for a long time. Steve and I have been playing together since we were teenagers, and he's been in pretty much every band. He's in Dante, he's in Wind Up Crows. So I kind of left it up to him to kind of make some decisions about what the and the bit should be. And I quite like those and the. It's kind of vintagey, like Bill Haley and the Comets and like Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Like, it's quite like old school pop music name. So I quite like that. So he's really into, like, I'm going to make it sound absolutely terribly pretentious now. He's really into like Murakami, and he really likes Wind Up Bird as a piece of writing. So he wanted like the wind up thing to, and then I don't know, picked a bird probably.
And what about Goodnight Lad?
So Goodnight Lad is the last thing that happens on the record. So Goodnight Lad is an audio sample that I took from. This is a long story. Sorry. So when my grandfather was probably about my age, he moved to Geneva with my mum and her sister, and he started working at CERN, sort of building the computers for the super collider. So he was involved in like getting that up and running in CERN. And when he moved to Geneva, his family, my great grandfather used to post him these audio tapes, and then these audio tapes sort of materialized quite recently in the last few years, and I managed to get the equipment to play them back on. And Goodnight Lad's how he used to sign off these audio tapes to his son. And what I found really powerful was this audio recording of my great grandfather, and it's hard to describe, but just viewing my grandfather as a son rather than a grandfather, and like hearing this like father-son relationship from 70 years ago or something, you know, like from a long time ago. It was a really interesting and really emotionally, it's hard to describe that sense, but like hearing people communicate, like, because I've got a son now as well, and just hearing like this 2 generations ago, this relationship between a father and son. And so the Goodnight Lad's the sign off he used to always have at the end of these audio tapes, and I've managed to sample that. It's right at the end of the record as well. So
awesome. What we do with all our guests is basically a quick fire round as well, just to wrap things up.
Oh Christ, alright.
It's not too traumatic, honestly. You've maybe answered this one, but let's go again. What was the music of your youth, and do you still carry it with you?
Music of my youth? What do I return to? No, I don't really listen to as much of it as I used to. I like new music, I think, but the music of my youth was everything from, I don't know, Shaggy to like Ash to like amazing, like much cooler things like these bands I mentioned earlier that no one's ever heard of. Like, that's a cooler thing to say. But in all honesty, there was loads of like pretty terrible crap that I listened to.
What was the last song or podcast you listened to before coming here?
So I listened to your podcast.
Is the right answer always?
But I also listened to the Blind Boy Boat Club podcast. That's really good. And the last song I listened to was, there's a new Waxahachie record coming out, so I've been listening to a lot of the Waxahachie stuff that Katie, the writer from Waxahachie, has been drilling out.
Exclusive album launch or festival?
Ooh, festival.
Favourite food or rider?
I don't know, anything with cheese. Anything with cheese involved. Cheese board.
If you could collaborate with anyone alive or dead on a project, who would it
Preferably alive. But I don't know. That's a hard one. I'll go for something current. The Kneecap guys, they're really cool.
Restaurant, cinema, or lazy Sunday brunch?
Restaurant, cinema.
Digital addict, or can you switch off?
I can switch off, and I've been trying to do it more.
What does life look like after you stop music?
I'd be dead. I'm not going to stop music.
One artist everyone should be listening to right now?
All of my students. Yeah, check out the. I share their music a lot, but check out the Creative Industries UHI. We share a lot of stuff there, and there's some amazing writers, amazing performers there.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've been given or would share with others?
This isn't a quick fire round. This is a hard round. Succinctly, probably. I don't know. Just worry less about what the music industry thinks of what you do. I think be more confident in just making the music that you want to make, and worry less about worry less about success, fame, and get rid of this concept of making it.
And I'm going to hand you something which people just listening won't be able to see, but maybe you can describe it.
Oh man, that's retro. That's the first Dante release from 2009. It's unplayed. This is a blast from the past. This is the first Stitch Records vinyl release. Cool.
From where we started to where we are now, what was the good stuff in between?
Oh, there's been loads of good stuff. There's been starting this label was great. I still have lovely memories of doing this as well, and I forgot that my wee brother did amazing artwork for this, and he was still at school. He did all the artwork for this. He was in like 5th year or 4th year at school, and he did all these sketches. He's a professional artist now as well. He went on to art school, and there's been like all the this was the collaborative stuff, all the nice times I've had with friends and family, and but I suppose the best stuff has been fatherhood. Like that's the best stuff for me has been fatherhood in the last sort of 15 years. So, but you know, I've lovely memories of making music with my friends, and you know, Vicky and I have been together for a long time now, and it's nice seeing that, you know, this is the first record we sort of made together as well in a wee flat. So yeah, there's been loads of amazing times just making music. Yeah.
I know now how I went so wrong. I disconnected from the power, forgot to switch myself back on.
More music, less stress. Words to live by. Huge thanks to Seán R. McLaughlin for giving up his time to give me what I thought was a fascinating chat. I really enjoyed it. He's a great guy. It was so much fun to do. Check out the new album, Goodnight, lad at windupcrows.com. Many thanks also to Vicky Gray for making it happen. This was a Good Stuff In Between podcast, written, edited and produced by me, Shaun Milne. Our show music is Nothing's Going to Bring Me Down, courtesy of Willie Campbell. Check out his latest work on Facebook or at williecampbell.co.uk. If you're an artist or a PR representing talent who wants to take part in the podcast or has some news to share, visit the Substack page at goodstuffinbetween.substack.com to get in touch. Watch out for Instagram, meantime, for details of our Music Mondays, which is a roundup of some music that's going on around here, made in Norway, which is putting a spotlight on our Nordic cousins. You can find me on LinkedIn and various social media platforms at Shaun Milne. I'll be back with another episode soon, wherever you get your podcasts.